What is it like being a 22-year-old in 2023?
I think what I struggle with more than anything is
Very good question. If you upset people, they're going to come back and get you.
there is a very harsh reality that in many industries, women are shut down. But I think a lot of people use it as an excuse.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me an absolute pleasure to welcome a very special guest to today's 6-round podcast. We have the world-class interior design for developers, Miss Entrepreneur of the Year 2023, Sarah Lloyd, joining us on 6 Rounds Blueprint podcast today. How are we?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very, very good. I've been excited for this. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to go 6 rounds.
Yep.
3 rounds each. Everybody knows the drill.
Yep.
You're going to go first.
So, question 1 is about karma. Surprise, surprise.
Nice.
You're big on karma, we all know it, and you say that it'll change your life for the better. But bad things happen to good people. Do you think that you could argue that everything that happens for us is predetermined and actually out of our control, and the reality is we don't have any control over our karma and our good actions?
Banging question. So I suppose there's like lots of levels to it. My initial thought is so human design is like when you think about karma as a spiritual thing. Mm-hmm. So there's obviously the logic of if you do bad things and leave crumbs, you're quite likely going to have bad things in the future because if you upset people, they're going to come back and get you. Whereas if you think about the spiritual side of things, there's a thing called human design. Have you done human design?
No.
So, you know, like wealth dynamics, psychometric testing, human design, be worth doing when you go home. You basically just put in the date you were born, the time you were born, and where you were born. Okay. No name, no email address, no Facebook profile, and it will tell you who you are, what sort of person you are. And the basic logic is that your soul chose a place in time to enter your body. Mm-hmm. And for some people, it would be a young, fit, intelligent body, like, you know, you've chosen a good place in life to start. Yeah. Whereas other people's souls might have chosen like to come into this world in a more challenging environment, like bad parents, or maybe they've got a disability. Yeah. And there's a logic that says that actually they chose that because they needed the experience or they needed to learn from it. So that's like a sort of spiritual thing of why you might choose bad things to happen. Yeah. But bad things do happen to good people. And can it be avoided? I mean, the reality is probably not. Mm-hmm. It's like bad things happen. I suppose it's like, why do they happen? What do you think?
I think from, like, exactly as you said, like, there's so much that happens to everybody as individuals, good or bad, that, like, makes you into the person that you are. Like, obviously, the big psychological argument is free will versus determinism, i.e., are we actually choosing everything that we do? Are we creating those actions? Are we putting out good karma? Are we basically fulfilling a life that we've destined for ourselves, or is it all predetermined? You know, ultimately our subconscious makes our decisions before our conscious does. So when we go to say hello to the person at the hotel check-in or wherever, whatever sort of good karma we're aiming to put out there, is that actually our subconscious that's doing it prior to our conscious behavior? But I completely agree from like a humanistic side that, you know, like everything that's happened in my life, I would argue has been very up and down, but it's made me into the person that I am, and it's given me a very, very good life. But I wouldn't say that it's always been that way. So, you know, I completely agree. I almost don't know, you know, whether there is a definitive way to say that, you know, if we all put out good karma, if we all do great things, if, you know, then we're destined for a great life, because I don't necessarily think that that's true. However, like, I do agree with you. I genuinely think putting out good karma will change your life. Like, when I set out to fill the karma jar this last year as one of my objectives, like, I started seeing things come around at like the least expected times. Like, at moments I was really down or really needed a shoulder to cry on, or someone's hand to hold. Before I knew it, like, someone was there reaching out, and it's someone I hadn't spoken to in ages. And it's like, I almost feel like the universe has done it, but is that the good karma that I put out, or is that the world doing its own thing anyway?
I think to peg that, so I suppose the point is, the book that I wrote, Karma Credits, says that if you do good things, you'll get good things back. Mm-hmm. And I genuinely sit there sometimes and look at things that I've got, things that I've achieved, successes, and I honestly, hand on heart, think, how on earth did that happen? Like, like I have no idea how that happened, but it did. And the only thing I can think is because I did that karma stuff. If we go into the sort of challenging angle of the question, Michael Singer wrote that book called The Surrender Experiment.
Yeah.
Have you ever read that?
Yeah.
And it basically said that he didn't make any conscious decision about the way his life was going to go. He just he surrendered to everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up being a multi-billionaire, flying private jets,
Yeah.
and living in a meditation center. I suppose the question back to you is like, when we think about, is your life written for you? And actually it doesn't matter what you do, it is predetermined. How much do you buy into that?
I guess this is almost like a belief system, isn't it? Like anybody believes in any religion or anything like that. For me, I genuinely believe that we create our own lives. So like, I do honestly think that we can change the path that we're destined to be on. I don't think that it's determined and that's solidified and that's done. I think, you could end up living your whole life kind of, as you say about like the surrender experiment, you could live your whole life just letting everything happen to you. But actually, if you go into it with the mindset that you can change it, I think it's all a game to be played. Like at the end of the day, my belief system will tell me that I can change the person that I am. I honestly think I'm a different person to who I was, 12, 24 months ago. And I think that's only because of the implementation that I've put in and the way I choose to behave and the way I choose to live my life. And so I personally would say that you can choose whoever you want to be in the exact life that you want to have. Like I don't really believe in determinism, but I can understand, that there is a reality that bad things happen to good people. And how, is there ever a way to prevent that? Probably not.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And for what it's worth, just credit where due, having seen you progress over the last 2 years, especially the last 12 months, we've got to know each other better. You've become part of the team on Property Entrepreneur. We did some work together over the last 12 months, like visibly watching you develop, the way you talk, the way you dress, your confidence is visible. And then if you look at the end of this year, you won Entrepreneur of the Year. You stood on stage at 22 years old, and you beat people who've been doing this for 30 years, and you won Entrepreneur of the Year. Do you think that was a result of the last 2 years implementing the strategies, the objectives, the blueprints, or do you think actually you were destined, whether it was on Property Entrepreneur or elsewhere, do you think you would have been destined for that journey anyway?
It's a good question and a hard one to answer, but I think the hard work that I put in over the year, I think I was very surprised when not only I was on stage, but also then had won. And it, I remember you saying it must have been like 4 weeks after it happened. You said, "Oh, have you come down from the high?" And I still don't even think I've had the high yet. Like I almost feel like it hasn't happened. And I think that's because everything that I implemented over the year was all about habits. It was all about behavioural changes. It was all about lifestyle changes. And so it wasn't so much as working really hard to try and achieve this goal of, whatever it was, whether it was being on stage or, just completing the objectives that I set out. But I think a lot of it was the case that I was trying to become a better person and I was trying to be the best person I could possibly be. And so me being on stage and receiving the award, I think just like encompasses really the fact that I've chosen to make a life that's better for myself, and therefore winning an award is just a representation of that.
And when we talk about success and failure being very predictable, it's like, I'm not surprised that you won, and success and failure are very predictable because having watched you through the year, you just consistently executed.
Yeah.
The strategy day, you had a clear strategy.
I had my spreadsheet.
During the year, you had a spreadsheet to track each bit. And at the end of the year, you stood on stage, said, "This is what I said I was going to do. I went out and actually did it. This is where I am now." And everyone was like, "Wow, that's amazing."
Yeah.
Well, success and failure are pretty predictable, and like absolute credit to you for doing it. And it's like, whether you did it on Property Entrepreneur or you did it in another environment, having the ability to actually execute is what got you there. And I think whether it's predetermined or not, whatever environment you go and do that in, I think you'll be very successful.
Awesome.
Well played. Second round. I'm intrigued to know.
Yeah.
So I call you Dre.
Yeah.
Because you were born in 2001.
Yeah.
And when we've spent a fair amount of time together, working together on retreats, things like that. And because you're quite mature, you're quite professional.
Yeah.
Or I would say very mature, very professional. It's very easy. You fit in a group of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and you don't even seem out of place. But then when you said, we were talking at a retreat and you said I was born in 2001, I was like, wow. I was like listening to albums, driving cars or whatever at that age. And I was thinking, it acknowledged to me what the age difference was.
Yeah.
When we're professionally together, I don't even clock a difference. Yeah. But I'm very intrigued to know, what is it like being a 22-year-old in 2023? So you and your friends or normal people of your age, what do they do? How do they think? What's their lifestyle like? Like, what's it like being a 22-year-old in 2023?
I mean, I can probably speak for most people in that it's very difficult. There's a lot of challenges inevitably that we've faced. You know, I faced COVID through my late teen years, which was, you know, the transition out of university and out of school, out of university. So I think over the last few years, particularly, like, there has been massive changes. I think what I struggle with more than anything is the fact that I probably don't really fit in with my own age group that well. So I don't drink, so I'm just about to hit 11 months sober now. So I initially started out as, I'm just not drinking for now. I know that that's your tactic a lot of the time, but then it would turn into 3 months, 6 months. I said, I'll have to do it for a year. And so, like, I don't drink. I don't really go out that much. I live in a really rural, quiet town in the middle of Wales. And, like, my mum calls me 30. She's like, you're basically a 30-year-old. And I'm like, I know. But I think the beauty in all of that is I've managed to find a group that I feel like I fit in with. So although it might not be the norm in that I don't socialise masses with people in their 20s, I've got some really close friends, but generally speaking, they're either from school or from hockey, so from a social aspect. But a lot of my near and dear closest friends, people I seek advice from, people I go to when I need help, are people I've met through business and through property entrepreneur and places like that, where I naturally find myself fitting in with people who are in their 30s, 40s, more than I do with their 20s.
Well, let's explore that a bit. So just one thing as well is, when you did your end of year presentation and said that you'd stopped drinking and all the benefits that it had, and for you to do that in your early 20s, when I think to my 22s, it was like I was working, I was running business, but the social scene was just drink.
Yeah.
It was like drinking, it was clubbing, it was like all that sort of stuff. You actually inspired me to like, so I'm doing Sober October now. Nice. And one of my potential objectives for next year is 1 year no beer. Because I'm just thinking my life is so much better without alcohol.
Yep.
And when I've done periods of not drinking in the past, like a month, 3 months, did like 9 months through COVID. Life's just consistently better. Yeah. It's just so much better with, and I think, why would I ever drink? But then when I'm drinking, I'm like, why would I not drink sort of thing? So yeah, just to acknowledge that and like, thank you for that, because that inspired me, and I was just like, yeah.
It'll be your best year.
If you can do it at 22, it's embarrassing for me not to be doing that. Be interesting to explore why you are ahead of your years. If we have the opportunity to, but specifically, so I can get the insight to the question is, when you think about your mates, I just want to know, like, when I think at 22, I was at university, I was doing my placement year. During the day, I was all guns blazing, driven to be a success. And at the weekends, it was just full out party, socialising, down the pub, clubbing, weekends away and stuff. 15 years later, what is that space like now for the normal 22-year-old? Are they out grafting, they're working, they're partying?
I'd say, like, actually the majority of it's probably not that different. It's a lot more acceptable now to not drink or to not have this crazy social life or not party every single weekend. And so it's a lot more talked about. And I think a lot of people have said to me, oh, but it's so much more normal now for people not to have that lifestyle, that crazy lifestyle. I say, no, it's just more spoken about. Like, I still think the majority of people up until they're about 25, 26 are either in university or in first jobs. They're going out partying most weekends. Like, they're still living in professional HMOs and things like that, where they've got a social life as well as, you know, like, their business aspects. I think that people now, I mean, I don't want to talk about cost of living crisis, but like, there is an element, I think a lot of people forget how difficult it is to buy and rent, like, at my age. Like, the thought of buying right now is petrifying. Like, being able to not just afford the interest rates, not just afford the deposit, but also afford the actual, like, criteria to get a mortgage. Like, the amount of money that I need to be earning to buy the type of house I want to buy is absolutely ridiculous. So, like, I think...
Do they want to buy? Is the general consensus everyone's waiting to get on the house? Because everyone says, like, the new generations are less interested in home ownership.
And I think that's because of this. Like, I think because they're almost being shut out, they've automatically gone into, well, going to do other things. Like, people are traveling a lot more, people are taking a lot more gap years, which I think is 100% the way to go. Like, taking that time before university to go and actually explore the world, decide what you want to do, like have a little bit of life experience, rather than just spending, 16 years in education and then going into another 3 or 4. I think, generally speaking, like, the lifestyle is probably very similar, but it's just spoken about quite differently now. So it's so much more open about mental health. It's so much more open about, the drinking and going out and socializing. But people are restarting degrees because they can, because it's easy. People are going on to do master's degrees because it gives them an extra year of the social life. Like, a lot of my friends are still in university and have been since 2019.
And what about their sort of mindset? So when I was younger, it was either you were, most people, they sort of, it tended to go in 2 directions. You either left school and started a family.
Mm-hmm.
My friends who did that have got teenage kids now.
Yeah.
Or you delayed that and went on a decade of personal development, degrees, careers. And it was very clear. You either started a family or you were driven. And I've got this sort of maybe I've got this perception, which it'd be interesting to know if it's right or wrong, that actually the new generation are a lot less driven or committed to anything. They're not rushing into starting families. They're not rushing out to build businesses. Yeah. They were just a bit like, they can have whatever they want. They can travel. They're just like cruising. Is that the case?
No, I would entirely agree, because I think that, like, university is a perfect example. You can do a degree on pretty much anything nowadays. So, like, most people will go to university with no clue what they actually want to do when they leave university. And the reality is they're going to uni because they could pick any one degree. Then they leave uni and they could do anything. So, like, I think it's almost gone so far from the way of it being like, you have a bit more choice. It's not just you have to do this or you have to do that. Like, you have to go into university, you have to start a family. Like, you can now do literally anything. You can become a social influencer if you really want to. You can start a business. You can start a podcast. You can do whatever, that people are almost in cruise control because they've got the ability to just wait and see.
And do they, like, as far as like living, obviously you're saying about buying and renting, as far as like, again, when I was younger, it was like you get out the house as quick as you can. So like if it was to start a family, it was out at 16, 17, well, I don't know what age. You met a partner, moved in as soon as you could. At uni, you went to uni and then you got your own place. Again, my perception is that people are staying at home for longer, and is that still the case?
Yeah, so many
having
people I know
beans on waffles for dinner and like
beans on toast,
getting their washing done. Like,
I mean, I think yes, I think a lot more people are staying at home now. One, because it's cheaper and easier, and 2, I think like there's a lot less social construct when it comes to having to start a family by a certain age, or having to, I
mean, statistically, that's getting later and later now, isn't
100%. So like people don't feel the need to move out when they're 18 and go off and start a life and build a family and do all of these kinds of things. So as I say, when they're in cruise control, living at home is the easiest way to do that, because most of the time your food's cooked for you, most of the time your washing's done, you don't have to worry about rent, and if you do, it's going to be, miles cheaper than paying rent or a mortgage elsewhere. And I think the comfort of home is changing. Like, I think parental styles, I mean, it goes on to a completely different topic, but parental styles has completely changed. So what was, parenting 40, 50, 60 years ago, where it was get your kids out the house, move them on, make them create their own life, live for their future, is now more like people almost babying their kids a little bit more. They want to look after them. They want to spend as much time with them as possible. And then suddenly they get to 18, 19, 20 and they're not moving out.
Yeah, nice. Just closing one on the work ethic element specifically. At an average, like, is everyone driven to what's the view of making money, being successful? Is it still a raw fundamental that the majority, whether they do or don't go for it, they want, or is it they're just happy cruising?
I think the people are more in a mindset now of living a life that they want to live, and they don't need money to do that.
Nice, very interesting. I think they find they probably do, but they figure that out for later life. Cool, nice. You're up.
So this follows on really nicely. You have the concept of life by design and not life by comparison. How do we know what we really want if, 1, we haven't actually lived or experienced it yet, and 2, if we've had our external beliefs and social constructs that have dictated what we want as a society?
Well, that was my third round. My third round is actually called Life by Design. Luckily, I've got a spare one. Well, I was going to ask you the same, because it's like, yeah, well, like if we think about life by design, what is it? Like the idea is the reason we talk about life by design versus life by default is if you go through normal society, life by default would be doing a job for 40 hours a week for 40 years of your life, retiring with your mortgage paid off and never really, there's an Oscar Wilde quote that says most people fail to live, although the best they can hope for is to exist or something. Yeah. And it's that sad thing of if you let society, especially nowadays, cruise you through, it is going to be 40 years at Sainsbury's on the checkouts. Yeah. And people are happy with that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if that's your life by design and you sacrifice that 8 hours a day to give you 4 weeks holiday and a secure income to raise your kids and you're happy with it, absolutely solid, absolutely fine. The other end of the extreme is you have complete self-awareness and you're like, I don't have to do that and I have all this freedom. Yeah. And then you become really successful let's just say independent, not successful. You become really independent. You've got all the money. And then there's this whole other elusive problem. I was listening to a podcast yesterday with, do you know who Cody Sanchez is? No, I didn't. She's like an upcoming name, similar to Alex Hormozy, right. But so it's similar to her. But the other end is you've got this independence with money, but then a lot of the challenges you experience that you didn't expect to experience is, I've got loads of money and I'm not happy. Mm-hmm. I've got loads of time and I don't know what to do with it. Yeah. I'm working really hard and I don't know if it serves me anymore. And it's like, how do you navigate all this stuff through the gears? Every level has another devil. So I don't know. I think the main thing is having the self-awareness and the opportunity to choose it, and then acknowledging that the reason we do on Property Entrepreneur Life by Design every year is changes every year. Yeah. Initially it'll be to pay the bills, then it'll be to have a nice car, then it'll be to have a driver, then it'll be to fly private. Whatever it is, it changes every year. So I think it's a really good topic. And I was going to throw it to you. I was like, again, like intrigued about if you continue on this trajectory, you'll rapidly outpace where I am at my age. And it's like, if you're doing that with the idea of having a life by design, like what is your life by design? Like what are you trying to get to?
Yeah. I mean, it took me a really, really long time to kind of get to grips with the idea that life by design has to be internal. Like it has to have come from your own pure internal values and it can't be influenced by external things. And like I say to people time and time again who are looking to do their 5-year plan or who are starting working on their 5-year plan that like there's so much out of your control in life that you will not be able to dictate, that you have to be able to bring your beliefs, what do you really want in life, tied in with what you can actually control, and then create your life by design from that. Like if you'd have asked me 24 months ago, probably, at a point when I was still quite unsure about what I wanted, who I was as a person, the type of life that I wanted to live. Whereas now, like I could literally my 5-year plan financially by line, like I know by penny what I've planned for the next 5 years. And that's because like for me, having a family and settling down is a massive thing. That's something that, I really want to look forward to in the next 5 to 10 years. But the realities of, getting married, having kids, creating that life, there's so many variables in there about that would dictate timeline that I cannot sit down and write a 5-year plan saying, okay, brilliant, I'm going to be proposed to on this date of this year and I'm going to get married on this date of this year and so on and so forth. That for me, the only way to pull it out was to pull it out financially. So say, okay, well, if I want to have a kid by this year, then I need to have bought a house by this year. Okay, brilliant. That means I need to have X amount of savings for a deposit and I need to be earning this salary to qualify for a mortgage. So life by design as a whole I'm a control freak, like if that isn't already very obvious. So life by design for me, I know we've talked about me being in my 20s, is very difficult because I've got one person telling me that I should be living for my 20s, I should be going out every weekend, getting hangovers, making mistakes, like just doing anything I possibly can to live my own life so that when I turn to 30, I haven't wasted any of my time. And then I have other people who, are telling me that I'm going to be broody before I know it. Life goes by too quickly. You'll be 30 and you'll be wanting kids. And so like every angle I look at, someone's got a different opinion about what I tell them that I want. And the reality is you're never going to please anybody. So pulling out the things I can control with the things that I know that I truly want and then creating a life by design was the only way I felt like I could actually access like a clear way of that?
I think that's refreshing to hear, without a doubt. So we talk about life by design being a privilege. And from my own experience, having played it out, is one of the privileges is to actually have a plan, is like just to have a plan of things that you want to achieve. Like it's a privilege to want to be financially independent.
Yeah.
And when we talk about life by design, like one of my objectives last year was design my days. And it's something that I've carried on doing this year, is to sit down and I intentionally plan my days. So it's like, I'm going to go to the gym there. I'm going to do my steps there. I'm going to go for lunch there. And it's creating this environment where it's just like, even things like just make it, even eat my breakfast today in the back of the car while Andy was driving. It's just like, to me,
your ideal day.
It's it's just the ideal day. It's the perfect day. And having that plan I think is a privilege. I completely get what you're saying about the noise from other people, because it's so easy to get seduced by what other people are doing or what they have, but also take on board what they think you should be doing. You know, people will say to me like, you know, you've made all your money, you should be drinking milk out of coconuts, and like I should be living Adam Goff.
Understand what you want, you have to try it first. And so worrying about I don't know what I want is almost completely false expectation, because how do you know if you haven't already tried it? And you talk about in your Meaning of Life podcast, you talk, and this will stick with me for life, is a lot of people think that they want more or they want something and they don't know what it is that they want, but it's because they're already happy with where they are. And I think a lot of people are always, exactly as you say about external influence, wanting more, needing more, not knowing what it is, but it's because they're actually already happy with what they've got.
Yeah, a couple of things to pull out of that. So when we talk about trying things, and I learned this about 2 years ago when I took my holiday to Thailand, and I did it, and I thought, yeah, this isn't for me. Yeah, I mean, I'm ginger, so like, and I'm a lightweight, so it's like I end up with sunstroke and hangovers. So it's like,
perfect.
And I got halfway through, I was like, I'm just going to do some work, and I ended up working the holiday. And I came back and said, yeah, it's just not for me. I don't really like long holidays, 2 weeks. And then a few of my friends said to me, like, I think you're missing the point. So I don't think you're really getting it. And initially I was like, no, just trust me. It's not for me. But actually I pushed it again and then went away on holiday and actually liked it a bit more. And then last December, I went on a cruise for a week off the grid and absolutely loved it. And then I went to Jamaica a few weeks ago, loved it.
Yeah.
It takes a while I'm addicted to work. You know, I know I'm a workaholic. In the same way you could be addicted to drugs or alcohol or cigarettes, I know I have an addiction to work. And my challenge now is that's served me really well to get to where I am and get the life by design of independence. But then you have to unlearn it. So it's like the degree or the letting agency, you have to try those things. But also, people say you try anything once. I think you probably need to actually try anything about 2 or 3 times. So that's one thing to pull out. The second thing is when you were talking about, the whole life by design thing is acknowledging the difference between happiness and unhappiness. And there's a big difference between things that will make you less unhappy and things like people say money won't make you happy. I can guarantee you it won't make you happy.
It might facilitate.
But it will stop you being unhappy. Yeah. So like owning your own house, well, in fact, maybe the financial independence is having money stops you from being unhappy, but it definitely doesn't make you happy. There's loads of suicidal, successful people. That's the sobering reality of it, because they get that. And when you get that as well, when you have the whole life journey of success, what I was talking about that podcast earlier was Cody Sanchez and this other chap who's like a big YouTuber. I've only just started listening to him. And they were talking about the conflict of working all the time when you've got the money, and then you're still working 7 days a week, 80 hours a week, because you feel like you should. Then is it serving you or is it not serving you? And I would say, from my experience, the last 5 years, is actually it doesn't serve me anymore. It's like I'm good at work, I enjoy doing work, but I'm addicted to it. Yeah. And in the same way that being addicted to anything is a bad thing, that's for me. One thing for your life by design, while I was going to table it, is can you remember what you said to me your life by design was going to be?
When?
You said it to me like in passing once, and I said, you know what, that's like one of the most wholesome
I know exactly
things.
what you're going to say.
And I was like, I love that. That's bang on. That's me there.
Yeah. So, and I'm not ready for it yet, but I will be one day. And as soon as I'm there, it'll be the one thing I live by, and it's to be the extraordinary ordinary, which as a concept is, I don't want a flashy car and a flashy house and big things. I like a holiday every once in a while. I don't want some, multi-million-pound business that's got hundreds of employees. I want a very ordinary life, which is a house, a partner, and a baby, probably with a dog and a cat too. But I want to do it extraordinarily well. I want to be the best that I can be at whatever it is that I choose I do.
Yeah, absolutely banging. Genuinely, absolutely banging. Love that. Right, so back to me. Round 4, you have spoken very openly over the last couple of years, especially in our communities, about mental health.
Yeah.
And I want to explore that as a topic. So mental health, especially for people who maybe don't understand. I think people who experience it understand it. People who don't, really don't. And that used to be me. And I think people need to be educated on it. So from a mental health side of things, when you've had challenges with mental health, how does it feel? And as a mindset with mental health, good and bad, how does it make you think?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think from the very off, everyone's experience of it is very, very different. And exactly as you say, people that get it, and people that don't really don't. So like I've had conversations with very, very close friends and family who just don't understand sometimes what I'm going through. And there is no way to physically explain that. Like you cannot, the number of times, and even in the States sometimes that you're in, and people still just don't quite get it. For me personally, it's very up or very down. That's how I've always experienced it. I would have, a couple of weeks of absolute high and, what's an early morning for me, and have very, late nights. I'd be working lots, I'd be doing lots, feeling really energetic, like the world's my oyster. My 5-year plan is going to be absolutely getting drilled at this point. Like I'm going into it, I've got a vision for the future. And then for me, like it just completely tip-turns. So then I'll be like in a state of, I can't get out of bed. I have no motivation. I don't really see the point of living. There's an element of why do we do it, ultimately. And the one thing that's really difficult to explain is that I almost feel like that's a second part of me. I don't feel like that's me. So now that I'm not in that mindset, I can quite easily talk about and articulate the fact that that's not who I am. Like I've got a life I want to live. I want to, see it through till I'm old and grey. I've got all these dreams, all these aspirations, all these things that I want to do. But sometimes when you're in that mental state of almost like, why do we do it? What's the point of it? Is it just takes away from all enjoyment of life. I think that's the best way to put it into words. Like I'd cancel plans with my friends because it's easier to sit at home and watch TV or do nothing, or work is often the case. I'll often, be in a situation where then work will fall by the wayside because I don't have the motivation to get up into the office first thing in the morning. And then suddenly I've done nothing until 10 o'clock. And then I realise that I'm procrastinating. And I get annoyed that I'm procrastinating. And then it just spirals because I'm annoyed that I'm not doing the work. I then distract myself with something else and then I don't get the work done. And it just gets worse. And then in a matter of days or weeks, it'll just pick up and I'll be right up at the other side.
Assuming you're not actually bipolar, when people talk about bipolar disorder, of the fact it's literally like night and day, you can be high or you can be low. I'm assuming that just that's a way to explain it.
It is exactly that. So and exactly as you said, like I'm an open book about it. Like I think people who don't understand it don't need to understand it, but they need to be aware of it.
I think they do though. This is where the problem is, and I've openly said this on podcasts in the past, is back in the day when I had a big team, people would come to me and say, look, I'm just having a really bad day, I feel really anxious today. And I genuinely used to think, snap yourself out of it, come on, think positive, wake up, smile, happy days. And then in 2019, when I did my body transformation and experienced anxiety, you can't turn it on and off. It's like if you had a broken leg, You couldn't go, that's all right, come on, let's warm up, let's do a lap round the block. It's a broken leg and it needs fixing. And mental health is the same as that. It's like it is a thing that if it's when it's off or it's broken, it's...
And there's such a taboo around, like, so, like, I quite happily admit, like, I'm on medication to try and help control my moods because, exactly as you say, they're either through the roof or completely down the ground. And so, like, managing and running a business, you cannot physically do in that state because you cannot control what's happening with sales, marketing, finances. You cannot manage your own team if you can't manage yourself. And so for me, like one of the best resorts was just finding ways to manage that and balance that. And so, like, I think it has such a big impact on the day-to-day life. Like, I'm in an absolutely great place at the moment, but if you'd have asked me maybe in like February, March this year, I was probably in quite a low place and like actually trying to pull myself out of that. I was almost like, should I be running the business? And this is when these sort of like contemplations start to come in and you think, actually, this is where it starts to go wrong, because then it starts to affect not only your personal life, but your business life as well.
And for what it's worth, that entrepreneurial journey, you've seen images on social media before of, this is the entrepreneurial journey. Oh, this is amazing. Oh, it's never going to work. I'm going to make $1 million. Oh, I'm going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
That is the entrepreneurial roller coaster anyway. Couple that with anxiety, depression, mental health challenges. It's like, it is, that's just, it is turbocharging. And for people who don't get, like, people say, come on, smile, cheer up. Yeah. But you're in that hole. What does it feel like? What is it, when you're in, just take yourself back to like a period, assuming you're comfortable doing it. Like just a point where you can pinpoint feeling in that spot, just to try and articulate to people.
Yeah,
what you're thinking. How does it feel?
I'm sure my parents won't mind me mentioning them. My mum understands it. My dad doesn't. Yeah. So there have been numerous times where I've been sat crying in the office, having a breakdown at 10 o'clock in the morning because I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And my mum doesn't really say that much, but listens and offers advice where she can. And my dad will happily admit he wants to offer solutions, and I'm very aware that I don't need solutions, I need time, because I know I'll snap out of it. I know I will get to a point and it'll all be fine. Like, he's absolutely fab in trying to offer solutions for things, but it's at a point where you honestly feel like there's nothing that will help. So people trying to give you solutions, it's just adding fuel to the fire of like, it's something else I can't implement, it's something else I can't do. And so sometimes, like, offering people, like, I know people say, like, be a good listener. I'm talking about, like, I spoke to Sen at the last workshop and I said, if there was anything I could do, we had the heroes workshop and I was thinking one of my heroes is Sen, 100%. He's probably the best listener I think I've ever had my entire life. He remembers things from conversations that I can't even remember we spoke about, and he picks out those kinds of details. And I think if you ever want to be someone that, when someone's struggling, they can come to you and they feel safe in your environment. It's just to listen and on board, like, and stop yourself. Ikigo Ichi is one of the best, like, books for it. Is, don't go into it with a conception of what you're already going to respond to. So, like, if someone comes to you, they're struggling, don't go into it with, like, okay, well, I know that if someone's struggling, I should tell them that maybe they should go and do some exercise, or maybe they should go and do this. I just don't want to hear it. Like, just go in open mind. If they're struggling about one specific thing, maybe just ask open questions. So you don't have to offer solutions. You don't have to let them just constantly talk at you. Ask questions that then they can try and reflect on their own emotions themselves. Yeah, which is an incredible leadership trait. When I had a better understanding of mental health, just when you see someone's in a hole, just letting them download the amount of messages, voice notes, personal stuff I've had from my team over the years, because they feel like it's a safe place to download. Obviously, there's a line and you need to make sure that it's not in the way of work, but there's ways to deal with it and ways not to deal with it. To close this round off, everything, like, one of the big things about mental health is, for a lot of people, understanding that it's not something you're ever going to get over. Yeah. It's always going to be part of your life, and it's just how to deal with it. Yeah. What things have you done for other people who are listening to this who've had those mental health issues? They've had those days where they feel like obviously there's a whole spectrum, but they just feel like, what's the point, etc., etc. What would be the things that you do that if you do these things consistently,
they're beneficial for your mental health, and drinking must have been a huge one.
Yeah, drinking's massive. So, I mean, I think the easiest way to explain with the drinking one is my go-to story. I just didn't want it. I don't enjoy it. I don't particularly. It saves me money. I don't have hangovers. But I had a really, really bad experience at an event in November last year. I was very, very drunk, and I think it's one of the only very few times in my life that I've genuinely considered not being here anymore. And so for me, that's what alcohol reminds me of. So not drinking is an absolute. I don't want to do it because I never want to be in that situation. So and you mentioned that I remember the first time I really realised that actually I was going to live with this for the rest of my life. Like, this isn't going to be something that I can go to therapy for a couple of years and it'll all, pick itself up, and suddenly like all of my past trauma and issues and stuff will all be resolved and I'll be fine for the rest of my life. Like, it's a really hard truth to accept that it's never going to end, like it's never going to go away, but it is exactly as you say, it's managing that. Like, for me, alcohol is one of the biggest ones. Like, I don't drink and now I choose not to. Whether I ever will, I don't know. Like, I never want to say I won't. But
for what it's worth, I would say like my experience of mental health has been nowhere near as significant as yours. I've only not drunk for 3 weeks, and I can physically feel my mental health. And this might sound crazy for someone like me, but like just my confidence, my being relaxed, being able to have just a conversation without having to second think everything, jumping around, darting around, and it's like you just think, wow, that's how bad.
It's just so clear.
Yeah, everything's just clear and easy. Like, wow, this is. I mean, it's crazy. It's visibly 100%. Difficult. Visibly different.
Yeah, I also think like your home routine is one of the most vital things. So, I mean, we joke about it. I still live at home. It's my comfort. It's like my comfort blanket. I absolutely love it. I do my own washing and my own cooking nonetheless.
Congrats.
But like I listen to an audiobook before I go to bed. I always try and stick to 8 hours of sleep. I know we talk about sleep a lot, but if I sleep too much, I get worse. If I don't sleep enough, I get worse. So I always try and stick to 8 hours. So I plan my bedtime depending on when I have to be up in the morning. My routine has to be very set. So I try and make sure that I'm, regardless of what time it is that I'm going to bed, I've made sure that I've given myself half an hour to go have a shower, have time to chill out. Then I get my audiobook on. I've got a teddy. It's called Ears because I've only got one ear. And it's a level of a comfort blanket that I don't think people can like understand. Sometimes it's those home comforts. I think the one thing, if you're going through a renovation on your house or things aren't quite right home life, the first thing to look at when you do the wheel of life is your environment. Like, actually, how do you feel at home? Because it's your one safe space in the world.
And whether it's for mental health or high performance, finding that optimum routine of whatever it is, you said about exercise, diet, drink, physical environment, etc. Absolute game changer. You're going to hit the bell. Do you want to hit the bell? Well played. Whatever you're doing, you're smashing it. So keep going.
Thanks. Right. Last question. Is it my last question?
Your last question. Penultimate round.
So, if you and Sav were to have kids in the near future,
would they be ginger?
They will be.
Do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I'm putting money on that now. Would you feel that the current school system could teach them more than you could?
Very good question. So obviously this is something I've considered at length. I own a training company and have done for a decade. I own private school, which I've had for a couple of years. And without a doubt, my view, which may or may not be right, is that there's definite benefits of school for both the kid and the family. But there's some huge, it's just not as good as it could be. Yeah. And it's like it's like when people say, why do you do what you do? It's because we've always done it that way. Schooling was created for the Industrial Revolution, which meant teach people, grow them up, teach them the basics so they can go and get a job for 40 years, pay the mortgage off, etc. The reality is the world's a very different place now. And every decade it changes. But the education system, the compulsory education system, as far as I've seen, doesn't seem to have moved hugely with it. We're still teaching Pythagoras theorem, and it's like, or advanced algebra, and it's like you could type in what you want into ChatGPT. Do you still need to know know and show your workings? So, what was the specific question? Do I think that it could teach me more?
More than a school could?
I think could I teach them more than school could? I think the good thing of schooling is that, same as going to university, the biggest thing for me was moving out. I learned a lot of uni, I learned the academics, but a lot of it was learning how to be an adult, paying your own bills, buying your own clothes, cooking your own food, that sort of stuff.
Do you think that's what school should be teaching rather than?
Well, we were taught that. We were taught I remember making I remember like making like sandwiches, and it taught you like some home schools. I think that process definitely grows a kid up. And as a parent, unless you were a full-time parent and teacher, it's very hard for the working family to do that process. And obviously that respite is essential, I suspect, for families. You see at the end of the school holidays, parents are like,
get them out.
Oh my God, get these kids out of my house. So I think there's definitely value for that. The question around, do I think I could teach them more than a school could? Probably not. Like, my field of stuff is very specific. It's about investment, it's about wealth creation, and it's probably wisdom of life. And I'm quite a deep thinker.
Yeah.
So like it would be, it would only be for someone with the appetite. I think the good question, which would be one I'd throw to you as well, would be, what sort of parent do you want to be, and what do you want to teach your kids? And well, let me ask you first, because you're really looking forward to starting a family and having kids. What sort of parent would you want to be?
I mean, it's a really hard question in that, like, I think you have to be a level of settled with a partner and things like that to be able to actually vision how you would parent and how you would be. I think from my perspective, there's a lot that school teaches that as a parent I don't think you can teach in the same way, like social behaviour, going to school with other kids, experiencing, all of that. You've got all of the PSE and like all of those kinds of side of the education, as well as things like, when we talk about like financial education, how to actually live your life, like learning how does a mortgage work and things like that.
I mean, when we talk about schooling, I think it's criminal that people don't get taught, like people just don't, unless they go and look for it themselves, they don't know how to manage money.
No.
Which is bonkers.
No.
So adults on Property Entrepreneur learn personal cash flow management, and they're like, never done it before.
I've never done this in my life.
And you're
Absolutely.
like, how?
Yeah. One of the things that I spoke to, so this isn't my idea, I can't take credit for it. However, it's something that I would 100% like to do, is from a cash flow sort of idea perspective management, is to basically, if I was to have a child and then they had an allowance every week or month, whatever it is, to say they had maybe a couple of £100 every month from a young age, I'm talking, sort of 10, 11. So the concept of money, they understand, money buys things, but that's about it. They don't understand, how much money means and all of that kind of stuff. Is that they get their allowance, whatever it is, and then you subtract off their rent payment, you subtract off their bills or whatever their expenses payments, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to give you this money, 50, 100, 200 pounds, whatever it is, but you have to pay me this much back, and that's because I feed you, that's because I do this, that's because I'll put a roof over your head. So that the concept that these things in life are non-negotiable, they have to understand that they have to pay rent or a mortgage, they have to understand that they pay these things. That comes out of their money, and it's the first thing that gets paid. Whatever's left at the end of the month, they can choose what they want to do with. So they can spend that on sweets at the shop, or they can choose to put that into savings so that next month they can buy this thing that they've been really wanting from Amazon or something like that. The concept of money management, I think, is so important. Like for me, it's something that I had access to, but I don't think I ever utilised. And so if I could provide that, and then what the person who I was speaking to about it, what they did is basically accumulated all the money that they paid back in rent or bills or whatever it was that they were paying them for, and they put that into their savings pot, and they then got given that on their 18th or for university. So it's not like they're literally paying you to live in their house at the age of 10, but it's the concept of they learn what money means and how to portion, how to spend, how to budget.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a basic fundamental, and that should be taught in school. Like, whether or not I do go into like schooling and start to introduce some of the blueprints, we'll see. Every year I consider it, but I haven't done it yet. Going back to parenting, so let me throw a few things at you. So one school of thought around parenting is that most people want to be different parents to their parents. Would you say that's true or false for you?
I can say both because, so I say parents, my mum and my dad, but that's my mum and my stepdad. Yeah. So for me, very controversially, yes, I would love to be like my mum and my stepdad. No, I wouldn't like aspects of my other side of the family. I think one of the reasons I'm so mature and I've been through everything I've been through is purely because of like everything I went through in my childhood and my teenage years. I had a lot of problems with my parents and a breakdown of family and stuff like that. So I, for a very long time, said, I don't want kids. I don't want to, you know, cause them to live a life that I've lived. I don't want them to experience everything that I have, you know. And so for me, kids was off the cards. It was like, I can't never do that to someone. I can't bring someone into life to live the life that I lived. Until I realised one day I was cutting up veg for a stir fry, as bizarre as it sounds. And I realised, actually, you know, this is something that Ian taught me to do. Ian taught me to cook. And I very quickly realised that actually there's so much good in the world. There's so many good things to do, to experience, to live, to teach, that actually, like, I would be so negative to think that if I brought someone into the world, I wouldn't want to do that because I might be like my biological dad and my stepmom. I want to bring kids into the world because I could offer them what my mum and my stepdad have given me.
Yeah, nice. And what about when we think about drive? So do you want to encourage your kids to be driven and like be and bang in that success, progress, independence, or is it going to be more of a do whatever you want? They can be whatever they want to be.
I think there's a way to facilitate without pushing. So I always understood personal finance. One of my A-levels was in personal finance, and that was the research that I did. I knew it existed. My parents obviously are entrepreneurs themselves, so I knew that kind of lifestyle existed. And I said, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to go into entrepreneurship. I'm never going to, you know, be sat at my desk every day of the week. And then dropping out of uni, I quite quickly realised actually all the benefits to this, you know, this kind of life. I realised how privileged I was that my parents could come and watch me on a Wednesday afternoon play hockey. Like, these are things that I want to be able to facilitate from that perspective. You have the option to do whatever you want to do, but at the same time, like, you know, I don't want them to fall into the trap of if you give them absolutely everything, do they end up doing nothing?
And then finally, would you want to be, as a parent, would you want to be liked or respected? Like, do you want to be the cool kid that they love and they're like, oh yeah, my mum's amazing? Or do you want to be respected? You know, firm but fair. They draw a line.
I probably think I'd be more of a pushover parent than I would be like a firm parent. I would like to pass on my traits and my behaviour around karma and being a good person. And so I would like to think that my kids would see me as a person to be respected from the point of view that I will always do the best I possibly can. However, you know, ultimately, like, I'm nice to be around and I'm fun and, you know, life's for living as well. You know, like, I don't want to be like, oh, you have to, yeah, you don't have to be
stand by your
rigid
beds
for this. Yeah. Make your bed right now. Like, I'd like to think that's not the route, but I'd like to be respected for the behavioural traits that I carry.
Just to close off, because people are probably going to want to know what my answers are, seeing as it was your question, was the first one was about, what did I say to you about parenting? Was, do you want to be like your parents?
Yeah.
I think they're similar to yours. There'll be pros and cons. There'll be bits I'll emulate and copy, bits that I'll do differently.
Yeah.
With regards to, what was the second one?
Good question. You're asking someone with a memory of a sieve.
So having pets is a good example. So like Sav and I have got 2 dogs.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the dynamic of how we look after the dogs.
Yeah. And
I would say Sav's definitely the manager. Like that, she's cuddles them all the time, and they're always together, and they all love each round. So we talked earlier about you being well ahead of your years and in a different environments despite the ages.
Yeah.
Some people being 30 years older than you. I can't even see the age gap.
Yeah.
When we talk about sex specifically, you're in a very male dominated industry.
Yeah.
And like we're trying to do a very active push. Last couple of years, this year specifically, we did a campaign called World Class Women.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to get that split to like 50-50 of men and women on property entrepreneur. And year by year, it's increasing, but we're still not at 50-50. From somebody that's been in that community, been in the property industry, and somebody that I would class as a world-class woman, how do you find it in practice being in a male-dominated, or I wouldn't say male-dominated, but maybe there's that sense that, you know, there's this whole drive for like independent women, women on the boards, women in the industry.
Yeah.
Is it something you're walking around in and it's a real problem and it's an issue and it needs to be campaigned against? Or, you know, what's your experience in that space and what can we do? Yeah, just start off with, what's your experience being a world-class woman in a environment that, or an industry that might be heavily,
I would say it's
men,
like male dominated.
Okay, good.
Like
well, it's easier for you to say that,
say it like that. I think I probably controversially feel slightly different to most people in that I go into the environment as a person, not as a sex or gender. So like when I turn up to Property Entrepreneur, I like to think that people don't see me because I'm a young female in the industry and that's what makes me stand out. I'd like to think that people see me because I'm a good person that has a great business and, you know, we work well with clients. I'd like to think that's the environment and that's what people see me as. I think...
Do you consciously clock it when you walk into a letting agency or a networking event or a property entrepreneur event and you find yourself walking into a group that might be 6 or 7 males? Do you approach that group and think, oh, I'm a woman and they're men?
No. It doesn't really bother me as much as it probably does other people.
Why is that?
That's a good question.
Do you make it work for you? Does it get in your way?
No, like I think, this is going to be really controversial, but I think a lot of people use it as an excuse. I think, you know, there is a very harsh reality that in many industries, women are shut down and don't get the same opportunities as men. And I know that you know, there's a lot of effort to try and make that more equal and ensure that everyone has equal opportunity. But at the same time, like there are elements where I think diversity in general, whether it's men, women, you know, whatever it is, you've got people ultimately that will be picked because they need to meet a diversity quota, not because they're the most suitable candidate for the job or they're the most suitable person for whatever, you know, conversation you're trying to have or business you're trying to do. Like for me, it doesn't bother me, but I think that's because when I go into a conversation, like there was one time I went to a networking meeting. I think there was like 13 men there and they were the only people there. The only other woman there at the time was the woman that was on the reception desk. And so like it was a moment I was like, oh, that's like such a shame. Like it'd be lovely to see more women here. And I think, but I wouldn't say that it influences my behavior in the industry and how successful or non-successful I think I am, because I think that people value working with me because of the person I am. People value working with my business because of what we provide. And I think that a lot of people will use the excuse of gender or diversity for whatever reason as I can't do it because I already get shut down.
Do you find in practice it does close more, it does create more issues and close more doors for you, or do you find it open more doors? Do you find it really isn't a thing?
I think it probably equals itself out. Like,
okay, let's just where does it? This is just off the top of my head. Where has it got in your way before?
What, being a woman?
Yeah, where have you felt something and you've actually gone away? If you ever have, you've actually gone away and you thought, yeah, that you know that didn't work well for me because I'm a woman. Or has it never happened?
No, it probably has. Thinking of it off the top of my head is just difficult. Like, there have been occasions where I think I've been patronised in smaller conversations. So I'm not talking about like going and there's loads of people there or anything. Like there's been conversations that I've had with people and felt very, very patronised. And I don't know if that's because of my age or if it's because I'm a woman or a mixture of the two. But I think there are a lot of times when I go into conversation with people and I do feel like they almost feel like they've got the upper hand on whatever it is. And the amount of life experience and business experience I've had for someone that's 22 is probably quite extraordinary. And I don't think that they can wrap their head around it, which is why that conversation ends up coming out the way that it does. I wouldn't say that from, I'd say very equally, I haven't had any issues with it. You know, like I don't think it's ever held me back from being able to succeed at anything or do anything. However, you know, I think on a more personal note, I think it sometimes influences the conversations that I have with people, because I think I feel very like put down on some of the things and opinions that I have, whether that's because of my age or my gender.
Yeah, and I think it's, when I talk about, I don't say it lightly, about being a world-class woman, it's like, I don't think it is a thing, because you literally handle yourself. Like you speak more confidently than most men, regardless of age. Like men that are 20 years older than you would sit in that seat and they'd be visibly nervous, and I'd be like, don't worry, you're going to be fine. You just rolled in here this morning, you're like, right, ready to go. You're confident, you're articulate, you're smart, you're savvy. We sat in Portugal with that chap.
Yeah.
We were talking about advanced tax strategies, and you're raising questions about income tax and like how this will work and that work. And you just like, all of that handles yourself. And age, sex, experience, they're all parts of it. But if you turn up, you turn up. And it's like, that's probably why you haven't had.
And this is what I mean. I don't know, maybe I feel that it doesn't have an impact on me because I don't let it, rather than the fact that it probably does. Like, we all have different reactions and opinions and to what people say or how they behave to us, but it's how we choose to behave back, you know, ultimately that creates the conversation, it creates the discussion, it creates the situation that you're in. And like, I have learned to behave in such a way when I'm in an industry that is dominated by men or dominated by older people, that like, if I came to Portugal and I was, you know, getting hammered on the first day and like going out and doing all these sorts of crazy stuff, like people will probably look at me and be like, oh, it's because she's 22. And suddenly the label of being 22 would come in. I choose to behave in a certain way when I'm, you know, around certain people or in certain environments. And I think that influences, you know, the opportunities that I have. Like, I give my everything to things like property entrepreneur and to my business, because like that's who I am. And you know, ultimately, whichever way I choose to operate it is the way that it will succeed or not succeed.
Yeah, I think you've absolutely nailed it. And the key sentiment is, it's not a thing. It's like, if you turn up in every capacity you need to turn up in, professional, experienced, mature, etc., what sex you are or sexual orientation or whatever, it's like, these things, in my opinion, they're not things. Obviously, we want to encourage more people who might feel that it is a thing and it is an issue and it holds them back, and we want to give them that confidence that it's not. But there really is, for people who do want to turn up, there is a huge opportunity and platform, as you've just explained and proven, that you can get involved with those groups. You can do deals with those people. And against 80 odd people last year, you beat every single one of them, won the award. And I could absolutely guarantee that had nothing to do with what sex you are. It had everything to do with the attitude, the way you approached it, and how you smashed it out of the park. Yeah. Six rounds. You want to finish off? Nicely done. Enjoyed that. Congratulations.
Thanks.